Hello and welcome to Higher Ed Live, the live weekly web show about the world of higher education. We are all about digital development, professional empowerment. I am your host, Seth O'Dell, and I'm coming to you live from Southern New Hampshire University in Manchester, New Hampshire, scenic New England. Thank you guys for tuning in and joining me this week. I really hope you are ready for a lively show. We have a really great subject matter going on. It's the love-hate relationship of vendors in higher education. And you're going to want to check it out. This is a can of worms. We've been opening up a lot of them lately. It's going to be a really good one to have. And you know what? The reality is we're going to dive into it pretty fast this week. I'm kind of bogged down with a major project at SNHU. I haven't been sleeping, and as such, there is no weekly five. There is no unsolicited shout-out. There is just a whole lot of awesome coming right to you, and we're going to dive pretty much right in. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, I can't handle it, Seth. I need to get that build up weekly five, but I'm here to tell you no. You can handle it. The conversation is starting right now. It is higher ed's love-hate relationship with vendors. So what are we talking about really, obviously? Well, the whole thing sparked with a blog post from our first guest who I'm going to bring on, who is Tim Nekritz from SUNY Oswego. He wrote a post about a certain vendor that was kind of calling around campus, and well, he'll tell you more about it, but basically he had some umbrance with what they were doing, and he had a couple things to say about it. And then from there, the conversation kind of developed a little bit further in the comment section of his blog. Our next guest, Brent from EverTrue, kind of weighed in, I think you being the voice of reason for vendors that are doing hard work, trying to deliver a great service. And then, of course, the one and only Kyle Judah weighed in on the comments, who's the CEO of the latest company, Recovend, who's kind of trying to revolutionize this space for all of us. So if you haven't seen that article yet, I just sent a tweet out with the link. I'll try to send it out again. It's really interesting, but we're going to dive right in anyway. So without further ado, I want to bring Tim on first. So Tim, first off, welcome back to the show. Welcome back to HigherEdLive.
I know, it's been a while. I was the first ever guest of HigherEdLive, so I'll be the answer to a trivia question someday.
Exactly, and people might not know that. That's the first one ever was Tim. We did Facebook Places, I think. Was that right?
Well, yeah, Facebook Places, location-based media and that type of thing. Yeah, good times.
We go way back, first guest ever. So why don't you start by talking to me about the blog post that you wrote? This kind of sparked the whole conversation we're having. What was going on? I'm going to pull it up on screen and just tell us a little bit about the post before I bring on our other guests to shed light on the comments that they left on it.
Well, it was an example of what we face a lot of the time, which is that there are a lot of, and I will preface, anything I say about vendors by that there are good vendors and there are bad vendors, which we'll talk about more later on. But there was an apps vendor who was kind of like nibbling around the fringes, looking for people they could sell an app to. And it was someone who really was just, they were kind of just looking for a quick score. They didn't really explain things. They do a game that I call Flip, which is find the least informed person, or Flip. And so they were flipping around campus, and so I suddenly get a barrage of emails from people saying, hey, I think we want to get an app. And we've done all this work with a mobile website and all of the rest of that. I won't get off on that tangent, but and I asked them why, and one of them said, well, this vendor said we need an app. And it's like, how does the vendor know what you need? And it goes back to something I know Rachel Rubin from Ithaca College likes to mention, the OSS, or ooh, shiny syndrome, where people always feel like they want to, buy that new shiny object because it's someone else has an app. I want an app because I want an app. And so it was just that type of thing happened so much that I just kind of just typed up this blog entry and shoved it out to the ether that was about just a bit of a dissatisfaction of the fact that we are a central web office and we rarely hear from vendors. Normally the vendors seem to be looking for people who don't know anything. And I'll say the people we hear from are the responsible vendors. The responsible vendors will come to us first and say, okay, here's someone I can talk to, as opposed to people who seem to be looking for that least informed person, but who has a large pot of money or something. And Lord knows colleges are dotted with them. But I think part of it too, it's not just the vendors; it's a culture in many higher education institutions. It's the whole silo mentality, where people will look at this part of what goes on and hold on to their fiefdom. And there's a poem that I referenced by John G. Sachs. I'm actually going to post a link to it right here. The Blind Men and the Elephant, which you might have read it. It's where you've got 5 blind men and they come across an elephant. Instead of seeing an elephant, they all see different parts of it, such as one takes the ear and says it's a fan, another takes the leg and thinks it's a tree. Another one thinks the tusk is a spear. Another thinks that the side of it is a wall. That type of thing. So you've got all these people looking, instead of looking at ourselves at a college, everyone looks at their own little part and not what's best for the whole college. And in a way, there are some vendors just underscore this. They don't want to understand the mission. And I know that that is something that Brent did talk about mission focused sales and actual partnership, whereas we see so many vendors that seem like who just want to make that quick hit and want to butter up that person and say, well, you're an important person, so you buy this. And so then you start seeing colleges with 5 or 6 different CRMs. You see students who become part of an incoming student community, and then there's an alumni community, and there's nothing connecting any of those people. Everyone just looks at, it almost starts to look like an assembly line where everybody just looks at a student as just a position in the assembly line, doesn't think about the product as a whole. And so that's more or less where that had all been building up from.
And I gotta say, having read the post too, it definitely rang true for me. I mean, there's definitely, there's companies out there that are cold calling and are saying these things and trying to find that person and flip it and make it happen. I want to bring on our next guest, Brent. And Brent, when you come on, maybe you can just briefly introduce yourself so people have the background of you and EverTrue, so where you're coming from. But you left a comment. By the way, I should say I'm pulling you both up now. He's actually with Kyle Judah in the same room, actually. So that's why we have a little tandem actually going on with the camera. But Brent, introduce yourself a little bit and then tell us initially about your first comments on the post and where you were coming from, because I think you were definitely representing another side of the coin and adding another layer to the conversation, which was definitely welcomed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, first of all, we founded EverTrue a couple of years ago, largely based on my experience as an alumni volunteer for Brown University. I'd spent a few years as VP of the Brown Club of Chicago trying to help organize activities locally. I spent a bunch of time while I was in business school helping lead my 5th reunion gift campaign. And frankly, the reason that we decided to found EverTrue is because we were so frustrated with the incumbent vendor solutions that were offered to us as volunteers. I mean, frankly, I got a spreadsheet that was full largely of inaccurate information with a gift target that they wanted me to solicit from my peers. And I was so happy to do that. I was so grateful for my experience at Brown that I did help with that process, but it was so painful that I felt like there was an opportunity in a world that is being changed so quickly by social and mobile technologies in every other aspect of my life. I wasn't seeing any of that reflected in my experience as a volunteer, and so we decided to start a company, and it's been a real journey. We're based in Boston. Just over a year ago, we were 2 people. We're now 13 and growing, working with over 50 schools. And I think that I actually agree with the vast majority of the points that Tim made. I think that there should be a really high bar for us to earn your business. And I think that, we're trying to take that very seriously. The original vision of our company being built off of the challenges that we experienced as users of the vendor solutions out there today, but really hoping that we can build a company through the voice of our customers and the frustrations that they're also experiencing. And so, even the word vendor for me, I never thought of myself as a vendor. I thought of myself as a volunteer that then tried to do something about a problem that I solved. Vendor means to sell something. We think of ourselves as entrepreneurs, as creators, and in order to create something that we can sell that allows us to further invest in our business and build a company and help change an industry that we care a lot about, we have to do that in tandem with our clients. And so I think I agree largely with a lot of the points that Tim made. I think the tone, he probably wrote that after many very frustrating experiences that I can empathize with, but I think that for me as an entrepreneur, that tone sometimes is one of the biggest challenges of attracting both venture capital dollars and young entrepreneurs into the education sector, because it's so much easier to go out and launch a daily deal site direct to a consumer where you don't have to ask anybody for permission than it is for us to work collaboratively with the education sector to build a solution that allows us to build a company while also allows you to achieve whatever business goals you're trying to achieve.
And I think the points you make at the end are just so dead on too, that what you bring up too is the complexity of the situation and the relationship here. And as you said too, this is something that for companies coming in, it's not an easy market. To be a third-party vendor and providing solutions in higher ed, they're just not. It's just not as lucrative an industry as other ones. And again, your comments I think brought up not only that it's a complicated situation, but really that how big this environment is and what's going on is really pretty crazy. I can empathize with Tim having frustrating situations, but then there are also so many companies out there doing it. So Kyle, I want to bring you on and ask you a question then. I mean, to me, it does, again, it really just heralds the complexity of the higher ed vendor relationship right now. I mean, is it too dramatic to say that the higher ed and higher ed vendor relationship is almost broken? I mean, we described it in promoting the show as love-hate. I think at best that's definitely where it's at today.
Yeah, it's a great point. In my comments in Tim's blog post, kind of hit upon the fact that for the last 20 years, or the better part of it, the majority of vendors in the space haven't kind of viewed the situation of working with the school as opposed to selling to the school. So they've been providing really low quality products, a low level of customer service. They haven't really focused on the actual needs and what Brent hit upon, the mission of the school and how they're a solution to help achieve that mission. And so I think that there's been a history of really, really bad baggage with the majority of the vendors. And unfortunately, it's colored everyone's experience. And the majority of vendors in the space don't really know that, especially newer vendors that are starting to sell to schools, don't really know and understand that there's this long history that they're going to have to overcome. Unfortunately, a lot of our predecessors have dug a really, really deep hole. I'd like to think that it's not beyond repair, that there is a great opportunity for vendors like EverTrue and hopefully what Recovend is trying to do as well to help repair that and help show schools that, just because we sell to you, just because we partner with you, doesn't mean that we're just in it for your money. That, we started these companies because we love higher ed, but at the same time that we noticed that there was a lot of inefficiencies around it, that there was a lack of innovation, that there was unmet needs out there in the market, whether it's in terms of alumni relations that EverTrue is doing and connecting alumni across the world, or what Recovend's doing in terms of helping to make the purchasing of goods and services a lot more collaborative for these schools. So helping people across departments work together to actually figure out what are the needs of the school, how does a purchase impact faculty, instructional technology, a central web office like what Tim's running, because right now that doesn't exist at all. I mean, an office can be across the hall from one another and they won't talk to each other about a purchase that impacts a bunch of different stakeholder groups. And schools, unfortunately, can't afford to operate that way any longer. And that's kind of what I was trying to hit upon in the comments was, there's this history of bad baggage that vendors have to overcome when they're working with the school. But a lot of it is also on the school. I mean, you can't necessarily fault a vendor for calling around to a bunch of different offices. I mean, as I said, if somebody can figure out the organizational hierarchy at a college, they deserve a MacArthur Fellow Scholarship, because it's just totally complex, and every school likes to think of themselves as their own unique little snowflake, and their organization is so special. But a vendor might not know whose responsibilities, what office they actually match up with closest, and they're just trying to based on past conversations, try and connect with somebody who cares, who can engage with them, who's going to give them the time of day to actually explain how they might be a great solution for some of the problems out there.
And you bring up a really good point about the fact that, I mean, we hear the stories. I've experienced completely what Tim has experienced, which is, vendors calling all over the place. And what it feels like to me on the inside is someone who's just looking to find anyone that's willing to say yes. And if you say no, they move on to the next person. They say no, they move on to the next person. On some level, though, too, it is interesting that we don't always know the intent. That, like I said, to understand, no two universities are the same. So to understand who might purchase your product or be your partner at one institution, that could be a totally different role at another one. So it's not like you're always calling for the same person with the same title, and it's that simple. I'm going to ask the first loaded question. I'm going to toss it over to Tim then, and let's get into this. I really want to have this conversation then. So what is the role of third-party providers, solution providers? What's the role of vendors, as the word we're using in higher ed in general? And the caveat I'm bringing this up with is that if it's to help us solve problems and reach goals, then there should be, I think we would all agree, like one commonality is that we should understand, or at least attempt to understand, an institution's goals before we attempt to provide a solution to help them get there. And maybe that's kind of one of the underlying things that Tim was feeling in his experiences. So Tim, when you look at this, where do you see, with the companies that you do work with that are solution providers, how do you see that relationship and how do you see their role within your institution?
Well, in a way, it becomes a bit of a cost-benefit issue, as is everything in the squeezed world of higher ed. Read Media, a company I know we all like a lot, that they handle our hometown news releases for dean's lists and graduation, that type of thing. They provide a great service at a good price, but also they're always willing to innovate. They always are asking us questions, want to know what our needs are. And so when they expand their business model, it is, yes, obviously they want to, find different ways to get to have business, but it's also to solve our problem. And I feel like they're bringing us along with them. And I know that they do like a series of topical talks about higher ed to try to have people understand it better. So they're actively involved in the process of educating their consumers and their clients, and not just saying, hey, we have this new service, but talk about what's actually going on. I prefer I know someone somewhere mentioned the people who say that they'll only do business with a vendor if they buy them a beer at a conference or something like that, and then that's just ludicrous. Obviously, well, for one thing, if you're going to sell yourself out for a beer, that doesn't say much. But the idea that I can sit down and talk with some vendors, we'll call them partners or solution providers or whatever, and have a really stimulating conversation where I realize that they are talking about some great things that we would like to do. And I bring up Kevin Prentice as an example because I think he has got a lot of great solutions that I would love it if we could ever find a way to buy them, where they're just brilliant and visionary, but they're all going back to your core mission, your what's really important to your college, your needs. And I think that's, again, what Brent was referring to in his thing about, talking about mission-wide and looking at the college as a whole and saying, can I provide something that will benefit you in this way or more than one way, as opposed to just being someone who's swooping in to make a sale.
And I gotta say, I love the point you made about the beer, because the reality is, let's think about this for a second, because people go to conferences, they meet vendors, but why is it that sometimes people do more work with people that they do meet at conferences than they know, and it comes down to trust. And there's this really interesting thing that I find, that trust does not exist naturally in the third-party solution providers on a normal basis. If we meet people on conferences and we're there, it's a great opportunity. But Kyle, let me bring you on. I mean, the RFP process, for instance, does not provide any opportunity to really connect with someone. When you're talking about big dollar signs, and by the way, something I think that's important to make a point to be made is, you hear Mark Greenfield talk about all the time, but the way higher ed is going, we need to outsource more. We simply do. Why are we trying to do something in-house that someone can do out-house better? That something they can do it better, they can do it cheaper. It makes sense. But at the same time, this is sometimes big money or big time or just big projects and big responsibility. It's not always dollar signs. But when it comes to connecting with someone, I mean, whether it's an RFP or not, I mean, I don't know, Kyle, it seems to me that the process lacks an ability sometimes to trust someone. Because in a way, when you hire someone from the outside, as someone who's an inside higher ed, your name's still on the line. You're getting into bed with them. You're really saying that we're going to do this together. And there's a fear sometimes that someone could cut and run. I mean, it's funny, but I think this relationships, it's more about relationships, romantic relationships than you might think. About you're getting into bed with somebody, you're trusting them, but what if they could just cut and run? Do they have the same amount invested in this relationship that I do? So where is this at, Kyle? Where can we move forward? Because it seems to me that that's an issue of how can we properly build trust when we're in the acquisition process, when we're out there and we're shopping and we're looking for solution providers.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, we firmly believe at Recovend that the procurement process as it stands right now is just totally broken. It's massively inefficient. It's conducted offline in committee meeting after committee meeting after committee meeting. It's a process that's really non-collaborative. So a lot of times the actual end users of the products aren't involved at all early on in the process when they can really add value and tap expertise. I mean, the opinions and advice and expertise and knowledge of the administrators within higher ed is one of the most untapped resources that these institutions have right now. And it's really a damn shame, because I think if they're able to get involved early on, if they're able to help illuminate those internal discussions and move them along a lot faster, this can be a lot more rewarding process for everybody, and it can really make sure that it's a lot more informed, it's a lot more efficient, and that ultimately the folks within an institution who are making those purchases end up a lot more satisfied at the end of it all. So a big piece of what Recovend does, and shameless plug, we are free for schools, is that we help across departments, people collaborate on these purchase requirements so that you can get involved early on, so that in Tim's instance, to address what he was saying, that he could chip in really early on in the process and let him know what he needs from his central web office to make sure that this is a purchase that integrates nicely with the greater information and and technology architecture that the school has, that you can go out and engage the marketing folks, admissions, make sure that everyone's on the same page with this purchase, because whether it's $5,000 or $5 million, it's going to have an impact, and it doesn't work for you to just get emails lobbed into your inbox on a daily basis saying, oh, we made this purchase, now it's up to you to go out and figure out how to make it work for us. And just the RFP itself, it sucks. It's static. It's a Word or a PDF doc. It takes forever for somebody to prepare it from the university side, for someone like Brent or myself to read it, understand it, wrap our head around exactly what the needs of the schools are, and then prepare our own response. I mean, we've heard that it takes somebody on the vendor side anywhere from 25 to 40 hours. That's a work week to pull together an RFP when there's really no transparency. There's no sharing of information across the process, across vendors, across institutions. So, why isn't there a central resource yet in the space that helps people connect to their peers at a similar kind of institution, in a similar role, using a similar product suite, so that they can get the most contextual information up front, so that they're not wasting hours and hours and hours, Google searching or hitting up listservs or, shouting out across these fragmented little social communities. We're all a part of them. And not a day goes by where I don't see something on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or, the CaseCom listservs cross, the radar, where people are begging for information from their peers. But without context, it's useless. And without a lack of biased information, it's useless, because you're just basing it off of a one-way street. And that's not how these schools can operate these days with tighter budgets.
Yeah. And I got to say, a great question came in from Gabe Sanchez over at the Integral team. And it's a question I think a lot of people that are working on the outside of the university saying, how can I build trust? How can I do that? And I want to ask Brent what his experience is in just a second with doing exactly that, trying to build trust with people. The one thing I'm going to say just in general is I think demonstrating value is the most important thing. And you don't have to wait until we're in a relationship to do that. We're all at the same party. You just need to be a part of it. The vendors that are out there, again, we're using the word vendors, whatever. That's the word of the day, but it is what it is. It still bothers me a little bit. But people that are doing it, they're out on Twitter already. They're blogging. They're having conversations. They're not just going to a conference and paying for a booth and hoping I pick up a squeezy toy when I walk by, but maybe they're trying to present or engaging in real conversations. I will say that, anyone I've ever worked with, I've trusted them before I met them. Hold on, I gotta pull Tim up right now. He's got the hippo one already. So exactly, I love that stuff. We all love the terminal notepads and pens.
The Recovend hippo is awesome.
Recovend hippo, and it's a prime example that. So the question then is, my thing is demonstrate value all the time. You are part of the same thing. If you're addressing how to fix our problems, it's not my problems and the universities down the road. It's our problems as an industry. They are collective while different, sometimes very similar. So Brent, let me throw it to you. How do you try to approach that? And guys, if you're watching on Twitter, let's share. If you're working at a college university right now, share right now what you want. What do you want to see? What I want to see about your product without having to give you my email. Now, maybe you can't give me everything, but don't force me into some kind of sales situation. Let me take a look and see real nice case studies, see real good information, read your blog about how you've addressed problems. Give me access to information early. I don't want to necessarily be on the phone with you. I just want to kind of see where you're at first. I just want a little dating profile. Here's my interests. Here's what I like to do. But Brent, how do you approach trust building with the clients that you work with? That's definitely a big loaded question coming from Gabe.
Yeah, I think we're still learning, frankly, but we started out really focused on this problem that I first experienced and my team members have experienced in our roles as alumni volunteers. And while that's different than sort of being inside the institution, we'd like to think that we're at least really aligned in that nothing would make us happier than schools blowing through their participation targets, raising more money than ever before, engaging their community in the way that we as young alumni wanted to be engaged. And I think that we've tried doing that, one, by really building everything that we do. Our company's called EverTrue. Brown's fight song is ever true to Brown. Without that experience, I wouldn't be here today. And many members of our team have served in their own young alumni councils. And we look on LinkedIn when we're interviewing job candidates, if they don't have something related to young alumni leadership or, they do admissions interviews for their school, if they aren't engaged already as volunteers, then that almost raises a red flag for us. And so I also think, I have very strong conviction around what Kyle's doing because with Recovend, because The reason that we've been able to get off the ground is largely through word of mouth. We don't have money to go buy a big booth at the conference. We don't have the great gear. We're not taking people out for steak dinners. We just can't. And even if we could, that isn't the way that we'd want to earn somebody's business. And so I think that right now, our clients, I feel like, are our biggest salespeople. And I think what Recovend's trying to do is take that word of mouth that's happening in the marketplace today and create structure around it. In the same way that I want to go to Yelp to find a great restaurant that other people would recommend in Back Bay and Boston, I want people to be able to go to Recovend and see what others are saying about EverTrue, to see what our clients are saying. You know, is it that we're just great at sales, but then once we sign you, we ride off into the sunset? I hope not. And I think what's going to be great about Recovend as they grow is that it's going to allow us as vendors to have our finger to the pulse of the marketplace as well. And you can't hide from that feedback, which is why I think platforms like Yelp make restaurants better. And I think that higher ed needs that same platform that makes the vendors better, because you can't hide from it when it's out there in that format.
Yeah, and what you're talking about is transparency, and it is so key, because for a lot of folks in higher ed, I mean, if you're moving into a situation where you need a certain type of third-party solution, let's say like a new CMS, you're only doing that so often, every few years at best, if not longer. So when you're going in, it's not necessarily like you're familiar with everyone. So how to understand that and have that transparency to figure out is key. Now we're talking about a lot of things that, you know, maybe we need vendors to do differently, and I think they need to change, you know, be providing value and things. But I'm going to ask Tim this in a second, but I'm going to say that I think as a higher ed employee, my question is, what is our responsibility? Because I think our responsibility is to understand every tool available to address the goals of our institution. And I am not sure as we as an industry do that, because I know a lot of people, and sometimes I get the cold calls, and I don't want them either, that dismiss it and say, I don't want to put the time in to know. I mean, Tim, what do you think? Do we, as institutions, should we be responsible? And I know this is a loaded question, because how are you going to get a whole institution on board with this? But, I mean, do you at least feel personally like you need to know what's out there to help address the things that your supervisors, your institution are asking you to address, whether that's something that's free or something you can use in-house or something where you need to get help from the outside? Do you feel that's a responsibility, or just something of you going above and beyond what you're asked to do?
I mean, it's hard to say if it goes as far as say it's a responsibility, but I feel like it's a sense of duty that if people are being approached for things involved in the web, since web communication is my area, that I at least want to be as informed as I can and hopefully consult with people. I've been lucky lately because a lot of people have come to me and said, what do you think about this? And sometimes they brought ideas. I said, yes, we should discuss that more. Or they bring an idea, like there might be a vendor that everybody hates. It's kind of like if one of my students says, oh, I'm thinking of moving into this apartment building. Do you know anything about this landlord? And if it's a terrible landlord, I'm going to say, you know, run away scared. You know, similar to if there's a vendor that you know other people have used or you've tried to use and they weren't good, you want to be able to do that. And of course, then you've also got Recovend for that. But at the same time, one thing I've just tried to do ever since I started getting into social media or web is try to learn more about what goes on around college. Because, I mean, an example that we do already, if you work in social media, you're always answering questions from Facebook and from FormSpring. And to do that, you've got to know more about what's happening on campus. Since we don't really have anyone in enrollment management who does, or admissions who does social media, so we have to do that too. So I've had to learn a lot more about admissions. I've had to learn a lot more about our academic area. So I think in a way there's a lot of educational give and take on your campus that can be done. But obviously so many people are loaded up with responsibilities already. So some of them might want to say, you know, I don't want to take one more thing on. But, you know, obviously I think everybody benefits because everybody on colleges, all those people should be talking about potential solutions. I still dream of the day that everybody comes together on the table and at the same table and says, you know what, we need a life cycle management tool that will take people from prospective students all the way to alumni. But of course, everybody's already bought their own chunk, so it becomes, bless you, Kyle. So it becomes difficult to get that all together. Now I'm probably going to get an email from our solutions provider on that, tomorrow. But at the same time, it's the type of thing that I dream of finding good solutions and finding ways to get them done. So my first reaction is not to say, oh my God, a vendor, but does it fit? So many pitches I get are just woefully inaccurate. It's like, we can help your fundraising. It's like, I'm not a fundraising person or whatever. But when they do their homework and when they come to me, the Reed Media came to us first. They knew who to talk to, who to pitch to, and I was impressed by that. So I think everybody on both sides, the more homework they do, the better off they are.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Tim. Let me pull myself back up and just say, really, really good points. What does that look like? This is my next question. I don't know. Where does this look like? The problem I have, I guess, is this just a broken relationship in the sense that you're going to have people that go to conferences and just sit behind a table, and you're going to have people that cold call and do these things. How do smaller companies break through, and how do we get to some things that Tim's talking about? There's a great comment came through. Trying to pull it back up. Unfortunately, it's gone. From Guy Davis talking about if you from a really selective, prestigious university, if you're not already doing work with some of our competitors, good luck trying to get in the door. But then the challenge is, well, then that means you're also sticking with the same pool. How do you break in? So this is out to either Kyle or Brent. I mean, how do we address that? Because what I'm talking about is, yes, there are huge vendor contracts. I understand things like Blackboard are major money, Datatel, this is serious stuff. But there's also really great small agile companies with only a handful of staff that are doing amazing work too, but they have such a hard time breaking in. How do we begin to address something like that? Kyle or Brent, either one of you wants to jump in on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think from our perspective, it's a combination of really trying to, in the earliest days of our company, we weren't selling a product. We walked into schools with artwork, with wireframes, with drawings of the vision of what we had in our mind based on our own experiences, and tried getting validation from enough different people, essentially saying, if you built this really would address a problem that we're experiencing, and then sort of proceeding on that basis. So I think there's partly, really starting in a way that is focused not as much on what you're selling as a vendor, but on what problem is being experienced inside the institution. And then I think, secondly, we need to, as a young company, strategically work really hard to partner with some of the larger companies in the space that can help make the vendor procurement process more streamlined. And so for us in the K-12 space, that involves partnering with a web vendor called Whipple Hill Communications. They have a very open approach when it comes to their API. We were able to plug into Whipple Hill's API, and we can go then to Whipple Hill's 400 school base and offer a fully integrated solution with no redundant databases in a way that allows them to really focus on whether EverTrue solves a problem for them versus what are all the challenges of data onboarding and sending over a spreadsheet or an FTP transfer from their Blackbaud system, and it's a much more streamlined process. And so we're hopeful that, frankly, a lot of the pressure that Salesforce.com is putting on this industry is pushing some of the legacy vendors to take a more open approach with APIs that they've never done before. And in doing that, we want to be as open as we can be by plugging in and doing a lot of engineering work to plug into their system one time. We hope that we can then offer a solution at scale that isn't as challenging as some of these redundant database issues that I think Tim has hinted on and everybody's experienced.
Really good points. Sorry to cut you off, Carl. I'll throw back to you in 2 seconds. I just want to address one question that came in. It was a really good one, which was, how do you say no to a vendor politely but firmly and get them to stop contacting you? And this, I hate to say this, if the conversation is going to keep coming back to this. If you see all of the third-party solution providers, the people that are all in the back channel, we got folks from M. Stoner, we have folks from Reed Media, Varsity Outreach, Integral. These are the folks that are doing a great job of caring about our interests, our goals, and partnering with us. So the challenge is, how do I say no to the other guy who doesn't want to waste an hour talking with us about these kind of relationships? How do we fix that? Because I agree, I want to find out about solutions. Just a primary example, this one happened a couple weeks ago. I downloaded a white paper, interesting stuff on CMS and some other companies. Not really my beat. I was just like, it's kind of near me. I'm interested. Now I can't stop getting cold calls from them. And I should preface, it's not our sponsor on the update, but I'm just saying, it's like now I don't want to download a white paper because I told the person, this is not my job. The problem is you wrote a white paper I was interested in, but it doesn't mean that I'm still your target. And it's like, well, can you send this along to people? And I feel awkward. So I think there's no solution to that. I think you're always going to have dirty people at the bar hitting on you too much when you don't want to be. And that doesn't mean that Romeo and Juliet aren't down at the corner waiting to tie the knot. I mean, I feel like that's just a problem we have to all accept. I wish there was a better answer, but I don't know that there is.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. One of the analogies I really like to make is that kind of the traditional vendor-EDU relationship is kind of like a middle school dance. the institution's busy holding the vendor off at arm's length a lot of the time, and the majority of vendors are just trying to hump the leg. And so, maybe not the most G-rated analogy, but it's one that works. And honestly, like, if you're dealing with cold calls and the traditional outbound sales model from a lot of the vendors, and you've looked at their stuff and it's not a solution, be open with them. The only way you're going to tell them, and the only way you're going to get them off your back, is to just say, look, this isn't a fit. We don't have budget. Look, every vendor hears that, everyone that's in the stock lines, but be honest and open with them. Like, you're not going to be able to build a relationship if you just wall yourself off, and they're going to do the same. So many vendors operate off of this broken model of just hit 100 cold calls a day and do, read solution selling and spin selling and all this other garbage that's out there, and operating off of scripts on calls. Just be a real person with the people that you're trying to contact at these schools. Create these relationships like a human. And the onus is also on the schools to do the same thing. Be open with them. Don't skirt around the issue. It's just like drugs. If it's not for you, just say no. Like, it shouldn't be that big of an issue. But that's kind of my feeling on the situation. I know I'm traditionally in the minority on this sort of stuff, and kind of outspoken about how broken the sales model is for a lot of vendors. But I believe it's Guy Davis in the back channel talking about working at a elite selective institution and not even being willing to consider a new vendor unless they're already working with some of your peers. Like, you work at an elite institution. You are in a financial position where you can take those kinds of leaps of faith if it's someone that you believe in and someone that can provide a lot of value to you and your constituents. You are probably in 0.5% of all institutions that have the ability to do that. And if you and your institution aren't leading the way in that kind of activity, then nobody else will. I mean, this kind of lemming type behavior of keeping up with the Joneses and just doing things because my peers are doing it is what has gotten higher ed into this deep trench right now that financially they're just trying to dig their way out.
And the biggest challenge is that it scares away new people from even trying. And your graduates are going and starting companies in other industries besides higher ed because they're scared of dealing with these with these challenges. And so it really is, it's understandable why I think higher ed has been once bitten, twice shy, twice bitten, thrice shy with a lot of vendors out there, and we're battling that because we care a lot about this space and we care a lot about trying to solve problems. But we need to figure out a way to attract more and more young graduates to the higher education sector, whether that's working in higher ed or working for companies that serve higher ed, because that's where the innovation and partnerships will happen.
Well, and you just hit on the conversation I think I want to come to next. And I want to talk about innovation, and this is where Guy Davis weighing in saying he's wanting to take the chances, others not so willing. It's a very good point. I think his point was more about the culture of his institution, but it's true. So let's talk about innovation then. How do we handle this with young companies coming in? I mean, a really good point made by Colin from Reed Media talking about the timeline of Salesforce taking over, but this question is like, when a company goes small to being larger, dominating a space, I mean, how can we be innovative? I don't see a Blackboard. I hate to knock them. I know they have invested in a mobile division. They've done more. I've seen folks. I know AT&T has gotten in and made major partnerships. But I'm going to back it up even farther. I'm going to ask you guys a loaded, open-ended question. Can outside solution providers, my new term for vendor, or can vendors actually instigate innovation in education? I know Michael Staten's watching this. He's going to weigh in. And I'm not saying should they or should they not, but can they do it? I mean, that is the hurdle, I think, is we're having a hard enough time figuring out how to innovate internally with what we're doing, let alone having someone on the outside come in and say, here's what we want you to do. I mean, it's tough enough to rock the boat from the inside in the wheelhouse, let alone outside riding the waves. So somebody weigh in. I want to hear what our thoughts are on how the heck can we be innovative. Can we? Is that something that, and I mean, Lord knows I think we need to, but that's just me.
So Brent and I earlier today were over at the Hult Business School Venture Capital Summit, and there was a fantastic panel led by Yusuf Khan, their CIO, on innovation in education. And one of the points that came up was that I believe it was from the CTO of Testive, which is an SAP prep company, was that it really, the onus is on outside private sector venture funded companies to help move that innovation forward, to help create those solutions, to partner with the folks who are willing to go out early and work with them to come up with a great solution to address some of those needs. And then it's up to that outside service provider to help take that at scale. And so you need those early relationships to, like Brent was saying, work with the school, get feedback super early on to figure out how you can provide the best solution possible. And then you need the internal network within higher ed, because everybody's so connected to everyone else, and everybody's already sharing so much information about who they love, who they hate, what, through all sorts of back channels. You need those folks to be your biggest advocates, and that's kind of where the relationship aspect of sales and selling into the market really comes into play, because like Seth said, innovation isn't necessarily something that's being pushed along right now within an institution. Everybody's just worried about how to do all the list of responsibilities that's already piling up on their plates, and it's up to the private sector to really come along and create and spread those solutions.
Yeah, I mean, the onus is absolutely on us and others, and the answer is, yeah, it can happen. I mean, Blackboard was a small company 15 years ago. They, built and grew, and now they're a big company. And Blackbaud was a small company in 1981, and they've grown, and now they're a huge company. And I think that, there's an opportunity for small companies to both work with some of those existing solutions and also try to displace some of those existing solutions, and it's our job to figure that out, and I think that many of us want to do that as much as we can in partnership with institutions, because we really are trying to align our missions squarely with the missions of the higher ed folks that we're working with.
And now,
Well, and also,
yeah.
sorry.
No, I want you to weigh in, Tim. I need the inside look, please.
Well, because I think to us, we're not, we might be cynical sometimes, but we're not stupid. If someone comes to me, and I'm going to throw his name out again, Kevin Prentice, I don't know, he should be in the back channel somewhere. He can tell he's got a passion about students and about making connections. If you've ever seen him speak, or like a really good OSP, outside service provider, if you've seen a really good one speak about how your students benefit, if you can find me that, I will say that in a heartbeat. It's so easy to try to find someone in a department and say, oh, your department will do better, or maybe even your college will do better. If someone gets to me with a line that says, this is how it can help your students, like Read Media, knowing that our students are going to get publicity, and now they have a badge so that students can post their honors to social media, and I see that going really, really well. I think ultimately, maybe for some of us anyway, even though I don't really work in the student services sector, for me, how can you find something that will add value, to use a term that I hate sometimes, but how can you benefit the students who really are the ones who are important here, not just try to shine someone's ego. That to me is a bit of a differentiator when I hear that type of pitch.
And I got to say, really good stuff going on the back channel. There's a bit of a reality check, I think, too, underlining in what you're saying and what we're seeing on the back channel too, which is if you want to be innovative outside, yeah, the onus obviously is on you, that you have to make money. And I know the interesting things like you're talking about Read Media's badge program. If you guys haven't checked it out, check it out. Really interesting. But the thing I've talked to Amy and Colin about before is they're like a year or two ahead of, I think, most people even thinking about this. So yeah, the onus is on them to not only deliver a great solution, but to educate us on how great it can be. Same thing when you hear about folks like Integral, doing something that hasn't been done before. The onus is on them to demonstrate that. That's a massive challenge. But when it works, and hopefully you can identify people. And at the end of the day, it is a business. It is about staying afloat. And I think that is a little bit of a good reality check, but it also means that we have to have our ears open. Michael Staten just weighing in just now, actually reading the back channel, saying, culture changes through frequent communications. This conversation's a good start. That's exactly the kind of thing I think we want. I think we'd all agree on the show right now is that what we want to have these conversations, so that way if you are a company that's trying to deliver something new or different, as Carlin said earlier, find that scrappy institution who's willing to go out on a limb and partner with you. Yes, the onus is on you, but I think the onus is on us to be responsible and listen and engage in dialogue. Maybe not pull out the checkbook, but maybe at least engage in a little bit of dialogue. So let me throw it out to the two gentlemen sitting shoulder to shoulder and get your position on this. Where do we realistically go from here? Because we're going back and forth. Some of it's really important. A little bit feels kind of like semantics in a way. We all have the same idea where we want to be. What are some tangible things? I want to know some tangible advice you would give us in higher ed and then Tim and I are going to turn the tables and give you guys a little bit of tangible advice too. So what are your takeaways for us, not for you guys, but for those working within an institution? What do you think are some tangible next steps that can make these kind of relationships work better for everybody?
Well, I think that one of the we work very specifically with one partner of an organization, and so I think that Tim's comments earlier about trying to push decision making potentially to a centralized organization, that's real tough. I mean, because even working with one part of an institution can take a pretty long time right now, much less going through central. And so we actually try to take the approach of trying to solve very specific problems that may be at the fringes when you're in central communications, but for us are squarely at the center of the challenges of the day-to-day in the advancement side of the house. And so we think that as much risk as there might be from a central office's perspective, that decentralized decision making is going to be the only way that young innovative companies can really give this a go and try to get off the ground. And then I think ultimately there may be more central communications that needs to happen in the future. But just like small companies, as entrepreneurs, we want to run tests and iterate quickly and try to figure out from the data that we collect how we should proceed going forward. And I think that to the extent that schools can adopt that sort of lean model of not being afraid to run tests and iterate quickly, collect data, and then push forward, double down on what works and cut quickly and what doesn't, I think that we're certainly better off as vendors. You're better off in your roles at the institutions, and most important, your prospective students, your graduates are better off because they're getting access to innovation at a faster pace, and that would be my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, Brent hit upon a ton of points. I mean, I think one of the biggest is just open lines of communication within an institution. And then kind of, it's been in the news a lot recently, especially with the SUNY system looking to share services across the 64 campuses. Once you start doing that, those open lines, they become that much more vital, that much more important to having an integrated plan for bringing on new technology into a school. That's not something that I think is done frequently, or certainly frequently enough within institutions these days. That this mentality of committee meetings and then committees of committee heads is something that bogs down the entire process in higher ed. So an open line of communication internally, I think, will help provide a much more illuminated discussion amongst department heads or managers or even the coordinators who are actually using these products. But also there has to be a two-way communication. A school can't, no school's an island. And so as vendors, when we're seeing what's going on across a bunch of different institutions and different kinds of institutions, we can provide really valuable feedback as well. And I'm sure that there's going to be some hate on that one in the back channel, but we can provide really valuable feedback to the school about, hey, maybe you aren't using this product in the best way possible. Maybe you should be, trying to take a different approach, just based upon the amount of data that we're seeing across, for Recovend now 8 institutions, 50 plus for EverTrue. So we can provide valuable feedback to you guys, as well as what Brent mentioned, just having that flow of information coming back to us about how we can improve, rather than just kind of throwing your hands up in the air and saying, oh, well, this initial product sucks. There's no way we'll ever renew this, demo contract with them again. Give feedback, because as a young startup company, we're a million times more agile than a massive company like a Blackboard. We can change our product, our the target markets, kind of how we operate as a whole, a hell of a lot faster, and ultimately get a much closer match and fit with what you need.
Now, before we even throw to Tim to talk about what I was going to address, I want to say one thing, interesting points coming from Michael Staten and as well as some other folks coming out in the back channel about how do we go from the progressive minds, on this show to a reality. So Tim, I want to talk to you about this. Is it too far-fetched to think that people like you and I can try to help build a culture and institution where we really think about why are we partnering with the people we're partnering with and what's it for? And let's just use an example. Tell me about, you said you partnered with Reed Media. Do people on your campus know that? Do they know why? Do they know what they do? Do you think there's a level of education? How do we get beyond, you and I as individuals at an institution caring and thinking about this to, I mean, in some small way, ripple through to something a little bit bigger. I mean, you can't turn the culture on its head, but do you think there's a reality in just educating somebody in your office and making sure this is why we went with them? I mean, is there room for growth on our end for that?
Oh, definitely. You can always be modeling, showing success. I think it's hard for a lot of people in higher ed because a lot of people are running a project, and if they're running it with an outside service provider and it succeeds, they want to take the credit for it. If it goes wrong, they want to blame the outside service provider. So I think that's something we need to get on. And again, a phrase I've used earlier, I don't want a vendor, I want a partner. I want someone who really cares what's going on with us. And I teach a course in advertising media copywriting, and Luke Sullivan, the textbook that I use, which is called Hey Whipple, Squeeze This. It's a great book. And he said, for if people who work in the advertising industry, get to know your client's culture. I mean, I don't expect them to know the year we were founded and a lot of these things. But if someone is pitching me or pitching our college or any college, they should know how to pronounce your name. I think that'd be nice. They should know how to spell your name, but also know a little bit more about what our needs might be, or show an interest in what our needs instead of don't tell us we need an app. You're just insulting our intelligence when you do that. I think the approach that Brent has, which is like, we know there's a need, there's a mission that's fulfilled. That's exactly how you do it. You are actually providing a solution, not trying to make a sale. So I think really trying to understand what the colleges are looking for and getting to know them. And again, it goes back to, make the pitch. It shouldn't be about me as the person trying to buy the vendor services, but how our students, how our institution can benefit from it. And maybe I'm just a freak thinking that way. Maybe everybody doesn't. But I think the good news is when we find success, like I blog widely, so like when I find a good product, and a lot of them in location-based services, I saw Jeffrey Kurchik in the back channel, like Scavenger. When I find something really good, I'll blog about it. I'm happy to give that word of mouth out to people, people at other colleges. If someone is asking me about a product that we use, and I like it, I definitely want to tell other people about it. Admittedly, these other colleges are considered our competitors, but we're all friends. We all get together. We all hang out at conferences and socialize and do all kinds of things that we can't repeat in public. But although some of them chronicled on YouTube, but at the same time, it's a bigger world where we want to help. We want to help people. We want people who can help us. So I mean, that's almost like a kumbaya thing, but really it's what it is. It's about trying to find ways that we can all benefit from each other, and hopefully the partner will do their job better, and we can help them get business, and they can help us do what we do better.
And I couldn't agree more. You know me, I'm a hunky-dory guy. I'm right with you on all of that stuff. The last thing I'll say before I toss out to our guests for maybe the last round of the horn is also, this is something we didn't hit on. This is to vendors. I mean, we had a little table turn earlier. We said this thing to me saying, don't be desperate. Be desperate to innovate. Like, yearn to make change, but don't yearn to get my name on the dotted line. Like, don't be desperate just to get me in bed. I like partners that come into it like a real partnership, which means they'll say no to us too. And you see that sometimes with design companies and a few others. Ad agencies do this, but there's a lot of others that don't. Like, yes, I know you need sales, and yes, I know you need money. But come to the table and let me know, like, unless I at my institution am willing to do this, tell me, am I willing to do this? This is what you need for a true partnership. Make me feel like you'd walk away if I wasn't the right person. I mean, you're looking for fit, really good fit. And that has needs and demands on both sides. And I really love companies that come in and say, we want this kind of partnership, but here's what we expect. We want you to work with us in these ways, and I say, here's what I expect. I mean, anyone that's ever worked with me, I know, like, I'm working on a project right now with Catchfire. They know I say, here's my cell phone. It's 24/7. I expect a call at 3 a.m., not an email at 6 if you find a problem. Like, this is what I expect. And they say, okay, well, we expect that if we send you an email at 3, you're going to respond by 4 so we can keep working. And it's like, but that's what happens when you get, like, a fit with somebody, is then we have expectations on both sides, and I like that. I think that's important. So listen, this whole conversation sparked off of a blog post. So for final recap around the horn, we've been doing this for a while. I'm going to go back to you, Tim. You started this whole thing writing some evil, angry blog post when you were all upset, and it sparked this good conversation, this really great dialogue. Where are we at? What are your final thoughts to leave with us today?
Well, I mean, I'm really happy that Brent commented back and then Kyle did too, leading to this show, because again, it is, when I did once write a blog post that said colleges from Mars, vendors are from Venus. We don't necessarily understand each other that well, but much as, and it's like men and women, they don't understand each other either, but hopefully they can date and figure things out. And obviously, and we still need each other. Higher ed needs vendors, partners, I should say, OSPs, whatever we're calling them. But obviously, yes, we need partners who can help us achieve things that we can't do on our own. And I like the feedback. I look forward to Recovend coming along and being able to learn more about these things, because again, it's all of us communicating and educating each other. I don't know everything. I love it when people tell me things I don't know that interest me, and that can really help me do my job better and help us help the students better. So just the fact this line of communication is open is really awesome.
Absolutely. So let me toss to you gentlemen, sitting shoulder to shoulder. Where are you guys, by the way? What?
We're at the Holt International Business School in Boston, Mass.
Very nice. Well, so let me start. Brent, you weighed in before Kyle. You got in at least, I think it was 30 minutes before Kyle's comment made it to the blog. So let me get your final thoughts before I bring it to Kyle's and bring it back around.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, this started on a sort of, somewhat negative, I think, reasoned note in the blog post, but I think we should end on a really positive one, in that the amount of innovation right now that's going on in the world, in our country, and in the education sector in particular is incredible. And it's so exciting because there are constantly emerging technologies ranging from mobile and social and all of these things they're affecting everything that we do and every other aspect of our life. And there's no reason that if those things aren't affecting every aspect of your life or our lives in higher education, they will. And I think that's a super exciting just context for all of us to be working in. It's just things seem to be going really well, and there does seem to be a tremendous amount of enthusiasm and commitment among higher education to both support innovation by your students and support innovation internally, and we're really thrilled to be playing a role in that.
Yeah, Brent covered a lot of the things I was going to talk about as well. We are in great times in higher ed. Based on some external circumstances, I think the time is right for a lot of innovation to really pick up over the next 2, 3, 4 years. And I think we're going to see a big change. And ultimately, we're all about working together and helping people across institutions work together, because we're all in this together. And I don't mean like the traditional vendor institution divide, but all of us who really care and give a damn about higher education. And Brent and I have started our companies because we love this industry. We worked in it. We're in the trenches, and we know the pieces of it that are broken. And we're kind of butting our heads up against the wall and continue to do so. And same with Kevin Prentice and Mike Staten and all the great folks who are doing great things out at their companies right now, because we want to have an impact. We want to change this industry for the better. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is if we partner with schools who care and who want to innovate and who want to help create great products, who want to help the cream rise to the top that's out there. And if there's an increasing flow of communication within and across campuses. I mean, Tim said it best, these little fiefdoms and silos that everyone talks about over and over again, they're a virus within our industry, and only when we start breaking down those walls and working together are we going to be able to improve the
Well, listen, thank you to all three of you gentlemen for coming on the show today. It's been a really fun conversation. Again, it sparked from Tim, blogging out of frustration, understandably so. Brent and Kyle saying we're not going to let him get away that easy. We're weighing back in, and it sparked this great conversation. And that's where I think we leave it today, is that we've had this engaging conversation. We're trying to kind of cross the aisle, quote unquote, whatever you want to call it. And we're having a conversation about shared goals and partnerships, and I'm just really happy with where we're at. We need to keep doing this. The challenge that I leave with you guys is that the conversation is happening here on HigherEdLive. It's been happening here, for almost a year and a half now. We were founded with Integral was on day one supporting us because we wanted to have these kind of conversations. You have blogs like Hack Education from Audrey Waters. You have the San Francisco ed tech scene is bursting and booming. but the reality is our own conversations are still in silos a little bit too. The Higher Ed Live silo is like this, and we're all in it and we all care. The question is just to keep in our back of our minds is how can we spread this conversation, throughout our institutions or other folks that we meet. Let's just have an open dialogue. I say it all the time, but I really think innovation starts with conversation, with dialogue, with relationships. This show really hit on a lot of that. So I hope that we take away, if nothing else, that this is only the beginning of a longer conversation that's always going to happen. And I hope that when you get upset, don't be afraid to say something. I'm glad Tim put up that post. And if you see that and you're someone who's working on the other side saying, hey, that's not me, don't be afraid to speak up and say that. I mean, look at this. None of us are mad at each other. None of us are upset. No one had their feelings hurt. We had a really constructive conversation, and it's going to continue to push us forward, make us more efficient, leaner, which we're going to need to be in the future years. It's moving in the direction it needs to. So without further ado, this has been Higher Ed Live, the live weekly web show with the world of higher education. I'm your host, Seth Odell. We are back each and every Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. If you're watching, you want to blog for us? We got some writing spots opening up real soon. Send me an email. Happy to have you. But until then, you can find archives of all 75 episodes I've done, the Boatload Stola's done, all Ashley's done. That's right. We're racking up the content. It's all over at HigherEdLive.com. I'll see you guys soon.